Christmas came early for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Well, maybe. Merry Christmas Eve. Welcome into the Bleav in Steelers show. My name is Mark Bergin. Some good news here on Christmas Eve. The day before the Pittsburgh Steelers host the Kansas City Chiefs, it looks like George Pickens might be back this week. Pickens, DeShon Elliott, Larry Ogunjobi, and Diontae Johnson all practiced on Monday. All full participants in practice as well. But this Steelers offense, without Pickens particularly for the last 3 games, has not been the same as we move closer and closer into the postseason. And it's the Steelers' 3rd consecutive game against a team that will be in the playoffs here on Christmas Day in Pittsburgh against the Kansas City Chiefs. So we'll see whether Pickens can give it a go or not, because this offense just point blank has not been the same without Pickens on the field. Keep an eye on that of whether Pickens will return from a hamstring injury. So you don't want to rush Pickens back, though, too, because you're going to need him now that we're moving closer to the end of the year. You get into January, you get into playoff football. You want to make sure he's full go and he doesn't have any sort of regression with his hamstring injury. Rest and recovery are really the biggest things there. But the Steelers offense hasn't been the same without Pickens. And we'll see if he returns along with those other players. So keep an eye on that. Before I get too far along, I've got a few other thoughts before the Chiefs and Steelers. I want to tell you about today's presenting sponsor of Bleav in Steelers, and that is betonline.ag. The Steelers are 3-point underdogs at home on Christmas Day. Get in on the NFL action and do that. Head over to betonline.ag. They've got in-game betting as well. So if you have a hunch either way on this game, Chiefs have been awfully good in one-score games, 14-1 on the season, and the Chiefs have won 16 consecutive one-score games. If you got a hunch on it either way, head over to betonline.ag today. BetOnline, the game starts here. It's going to be a 1 o'clock Eastern time kickoff for Chiefs and Steelers, Acrisure Stadium. The game's going to be on Netflix, but this is a Chiefs team that is still fighting for something. And you might say, well, Mark, they're the favorite as the number 1 seed. The Chiefs lock up the number 1 seed either with a win or a Buffalo loss to seal the deal. Now, Buffalo has a favorable remaining schedule. The Bills take on the Jets and Patriots the final 2 weeks of the season. So the Chiefs fighting for that 1 seed, fighting for that bye and that playoff positioning, because Patrick Mahomes has some sort of an ankle injury. It seems like this happens every season, and the Chiefs start to play the best football towards the end of the season. But it's not the Chiefs' offense this year that's really lighting it up. It's really the reliance on the defensive side of the ball with Chris Jones up front. But it's really the Chiefs' defense that you got to keep an eye out on, because this Chiefs' defense has been really, really good. But some guys you got to try to kind of stop. Kareem Hunt, only 3.7 yards per carry. Isaiah Pacheco is back. He's at 3.9 yards per carry. So the running game for the Chiefs isn't that strong. Yes, they still have Travis Kelce, but he's on pace for his fewest receiving yards season in the regular season of his entire career. He's only had 2 touchdowns this season. Rookie Xavier Worthy, the star speedster out of Texas, has had a good rookie year, 51 catches, 559 yards, and 5 touchdowns. He's the leader. Now, remember, DeAndre Hopkins is a very good receiver, and then Noah Gray has also emerged this season. But this is a Chiefs defense where it's going to be hard to run the ball on. Chiefs allow the 3rd fewest rushing yards in the NFL at only 91 yards per game. And it's interesting, too, because the Steelers are coming off a game where Jalen Warren had 40 snaps and Najee Harris had only 17. So the Steelers are going to need to try to establish the running game against this Chiefs defense that's very good and not talked about enough league-wide. Steve Spagnuolo and that defense have really been what's carried this team. And I know Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce get all the limelight and notoriety. Mahomes is deserving of that. Do not get me wrong. But this defense is very stout, and it's going to be tough to move the football on them. And they're accustomed to winning close ball games consistently. Back-to-back Super Bowl champions. There's a swagger to that. And the Steelers defense, though, struggling. Back-to-back 400-yard games. It's something that the Steelers haven't done since week 3 of the 2019 season. So this is a defense the NFL's highest paid defense at that, that's struggling a little bit right now. So they need to regroup here. It's going to be tough to do that against Kansas City. But these are just some of the thoughts that I had. The Steelers right now, odds-wise, show that they'll either be the 3 seed or the 5 seed. Keep an eye on that as we get into the final 2 weeks of the regular season. But it's amazing too. I mean, I was talking about without Pickens in the 3 games without him, 248 yards per game as an offense. That's down from the season average of 324 yards per offense. So you just see the difference that he makes, not just for the big plays that he makes, but for other players or along the offense, considering the attention that he garners on the offensive side of the football. And speaking of the Steelers' offensive struggles, the Houston Texans claimed Diontae Johnson today off waivers. And by the time you're listening to this, you'll say, well, were the Steelers one of those teams? It was just the Texans and Chargers. The Ravens just let him go. And yet again, you see the problems he has within the locker room. It's not for receiving ability, but he'll go to another AFC team. And I posed the question during my postgame show after the Steelers-Ravens game to say, should the Steelers try to claim Diontae Johnson? They did not even submit a claim. And then again, he's going to go to the Texans. But the Steelers need a receiver. And I know Calvin Austin III has emerged somewhat, but I really think it's shown George Pickens' value. I'm going to say this again, and I'm going to go on record. If I'm Omar Khan and I am in the Steelers front office, I'm going to do everything in my ability to try to work out a contract extension this offseason going into the final year of George Pickens' rookie deal to get out ahead of Pickens potentially hitting the open market. And this is why I thought it was a possibility Pittsburgh could bring him back. I didn't think it was going to happen. I don't think the Steelers should have done that either. But I thought it was a possibility that Diontae could return to his former team where he played his best football with the Pittsburgh Steelers. They don't even submit a claim for him, and only 2 teams do. And if Diontae is not careful, and if he doesn't start to produce and do the things that he needs to do as a teammate and as a veteran player in this league, he could see himself going the same way that Chase Claypool is, and that's out of the league, and that's in the CFL right now for Claypool. And I'm not trying to pull punches here, but the NFL stands for not for long. And if you're not going to cooperate with your teammates, you're going to find other people that are willing to do that. And I think it's very telling that the Steelers traded him this offseason, even though they've needed another receiver opposite George Pickens. And I also think that it's telling that the Ravens, who traded for him at the deadline and thought that he could be the missing piece to take the Ravens offense over the top, that they cut ties with him mid-season. Now, to bring him in this late in the season to expect him to produce, I think is a little bit unfair because you don't have the full off season to work, to learn the system, to develop the rapport with the quarterback that you're going to be working with. And I talked about this with Daniel Wilcox on my pregame show before Steelers and Ravens of look at all of the touches that have to go around if you're Baltimore. Lamar's going to get about 10 carries. King Henry should get at least 20, maybe even 30 in some games. Mark Andrews has had 4 straight games with a touchdown reception. Isaiah Likely, Zay Flowers went for 100 yards against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So in Baltimore, he wasn't going to get a ton of touches, a ton of targets. Could potentially that happen with the Texans? We shall see with Diontae Johnson. But I think it's very telling that 3 teams in a single season. Oh boy, we'll see what kind of role he plays in Houston. But I thought that Pittsburgh potentially could consider bringing him back. I do ultimately think that it's a good decision that they did not. We'll see how all this plays out and what type of role that Diontae Johnson plays for the Houston Texans. I'm really excited to see what happens during tonight's Hard Knocks on Christmas Eve in advance of the Steelers and Chiefs. The Steelers are going to try to regroup here, have lost 2 straight games, try to get back in the win column on a shortened week on Christmas Day against the back-to-back Super Bowl champions. So the stage is set. It's going to be really tough for the Steelers, and they're struggling yet again in December. We saw this a year ago with this franchise. Very different team this year, but that shortened week, I'm curious to see if the players have anything to say to that. I mentioned Chris Jones earlier. He said after Thanksgiving that he's going to talk to the Players Association in the offseason because we claim to care about player safety, yet you're playing from Saturday to Wednesday. You need a full week to be able to prepare, to game plan, and get your body right. So we will see with the Steelers injury report as well. That's a thing to keep in mind where Pickens hasn't played, DeShon Elliott hasn't played, Larry Ogunjobi has been out, Diontae Johnson, the corner, has missed time. I'm not trying to make excuses, but it's the reality of the situation of understand the context, particularly with Pickens. And what I mean by that is this. Right now, it's a 3-point game for the spread where the Steelers are 3-point underdogs. If Pickens is ruled out, keep an eye to see if that line moves or if he is definitively playing, if that line moves in the Steelers' favor. I do think he has that type of impact on games, George Pickens. So we'll see. That's another edition of the Bleav in Steelers show. If you enjoyed listening, do me a favor, leave a 5-star review on Apple or Spotify. Tell the other Steelers fans in your life about Bleav in Steelers. And if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button on the Mark Bergin YouTube page. My name is Mark Bergin. Wish all of you very Merry Christmases. I will be live immediately after Steelers and Chiefs on Christmas Day following the game. So tune in here. And hopefully we're talking about a Pittsburgh Steelers victory over the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, my name's Mark Bergin. Merry Christmas Eve to everybody. I'll see you on Christmas Day. Until then, take care. So long, everybody.